Hi there, welcome to Citizen Ewa, the platform where we speak truth to power. Got some breaking news. Mali just dumped the IMF. We're going to hear the speech. The representative for Mali spoke recently at the IMF, at the United Nations, and I think he speaks not only for Mali but also for AES. They've actually dumped IMF because IMF, as we all know, they are really there to keep Africa impoverished and to keep us enslaved in our own land. This is very good news. Let us watch. Here we go. Let's watch.
I now give the floor to His Excellency Abdoulaye Maiga, Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of State, Minister of Territorial Administration and Decentralization of Mali.
Monsieur le Président de l'Assemblée.
Distinguished President of the General Assembly, distinguished heads of state and government, Secretary General of the United Nations, ladies and gentlemen, at the outset, I'd like to convey the warm greetings of His Excellency Colonel Assimi Goïta, President of the Transition, Head of State of Mali, and those of the government and people of Mali. Mr. President, I'd like to also warmly congratulate you on behalf of the Malian delegation on your brilliant election to the presidency of the 79th session of the General Assembly. Your beautiful country, Cameroon, an African country that is our brother and friend, enjoys excellent relations with my country. You can count on the full support of Mali as you fulfill your mandate successfully. Here I also congratulate your predecessor, Ambassador Dennis Francis of Trinidad and Tobago, for his outstanding leadership of the work of the 78th session of the General Assembly. And lastly, allow me to reiterate to the Secretary General of the UN, Mr. Antonio Guterres, our encouragement to continue his efforts to achieve the noble goals of our common organization. Mr. President, on June 26, 1945, by signing the UN Charter in San Francisco, the peoples of the world pledged resolutely, I quote, to protect future generations from the scourge of war, which twice in one human lifetime inflicted unthinkable suffering upon humanity, end quote. Today, we have the opportunity to discuss the following theme: leaving no one behind, acting together to promote peace, sustainable development, and human dignity for our present and future generations. The choice of this theme, 79 years after the signing of the UN Charter, is it a simple coincidence or the outcome of a certain mindset? We don't know. However, we must note, unfortunately, that the question of preserving generations is still a keenly relevant one. Not only future generations, but also our own generation. Is this a failure of the UN? It is certain that an objective assessment with realistic recommendations regarding our collective system would be key for our future. Mr. President, Mali commends the relevance of this theme, which is one of pressing importance. It is true that tensions and wars currently underway continue to jeopardize international peace and security, development, and the fundamental rights of populations. This comment comes from a country that since 2012 has been experiencing multifaceted and complex crisis that has led to the loss of more than half its territory and caused many innocent victims through an incestuous and opportunistic association of terrorist groups and armed groups. Mr. President, the drama in Mali dates back to the allegiance between the Salafist group for call and combat of Al-Qaeda, to the GSPC Algerian GSPC on September 11, 2006, exacerbated by the intervention of NATO in Libya in 2011, a reckless intervention. The destabilization of this country, this brotherly country, has exacerbated insecurity in our country through terrorism, all kinds of trafficking, laundering of capital, and community conflicts manipulated by terrorists and their foreign state sponsors, as well as the violent actions of certain individuals. For their part, the Malian authorities, having noted and witnessed the failure of international forces present on their territory since 2013, decided to take their fate back into their own hands. And since June 7th, 2021, after the swearing-in of His Excellency Colonel Assimi Goïta, President of the Transition and Head of State, a vast campaign was launched to equip and reorganize the defense and security forces associated with a Malian transformation project. The National Refoundation Conference was launched in December 2021. It allowed Malians to engage in an exhaustive diagnosis of the causes of the crisis, followed by the adoption of 517 relevant recommendations. In this vein, and after having experienced insecurity caused by the circumstances, we took stock of what was happening in Mali, and it was frightening. Mali was battered, humiliated, looted and pillaged, abandoned, left high and dry, stabbed in the back. I could go on with these expressions to describe the suffering experienced by the people and the Malian defense and security forces. Based on this experience, knowing that the danger to Mali resulted from these circumstances, His Excellency Colonel Assimi Goïta, President of the Transition and Head of State of Mali, laid forth a realistic vision of the geopolitical situation, using a popular Bambara proverb, which I here loosely translate: "The delectable sauce on one man's table comes from the theft of another man's cattle," end quote. Thomas Hobbes, describing the state of nature in a similar manner, stated that man is the wolf of man. Thanks to this proverb, these proverbs about gastronomic and hunting references, the head of state described the ruthless reality of international relations, and especially the role of Africa, the looting of the raw commodities of which serve the development of others and not Africans, for the most part. In addition to this vision, the head of state instructed or called on Malians, as part of the refoundation, to become themselves again. The head of state, on April 23, 2024, launched the National Program for Education on Values, which aims at a return to our origins, without which it would be difficult to imagine a bright future for our country in its legitimate quest for sovereignty. This call to become ourselves again has to do with the question of who we are. The immediate response to this question was provided by the slogan of Mali: one people, a great family and cosmopolitan nation, one goal to amplify diversity in unity, united for a common good, one faith, the faith that God has given us as a resource to bring about prosperity. To better define what it means to be Malian, Professor Ibrahim Ndiaye, expert within the Committee on the Implementation of the National Program for Education on Values, stated that Malians are characterized on one hand by 5 cardinal values: humanity, empathy, the obligation to transmit human values to future generations, the sense of honor, accepting differences and otherness on the social, human, and cultural fronts. And on the other hand, 5 inviolable principles that have to do with the country itself. That is, an indivisible, inalienable Mali, a Mali that's not for sale, a Mali that's no one's property, an imperishable Mali. Mr. President, by being themselves, Malians have forged a third path. They are not becoming predators, lawless barbarians that seek to rustle other people's cattle, but also not to become eternally powerless victims of predation. The middle path promoted by Mali consists of carrying out our own development, taking a more virtuous path, ensuring the respect of our sovereignty while respecting those of others, that of others, rejecting outside control, and refusing to interfere in others' internal affairs, remaining open to all partnerships based on a win-win relationship. It's also important to note that these principles and values characterize Mutatis Mutandis, the brotherly peoples of Burkina Faso and Niger. With regard to the Malian political transition, we must recall that following the National Refoundation Conference, the Malian people chose to conduct political reforms before holding elections in order to firmly establish virtuous governance. The implementation of the recommendations of the conference allowed us to achieve tangible results, especially the establishment of the Independent Authority of Elections Management, the adoption of a new constitution on July 22nd, 2023, following a well-organized referendum, the completion of our territorial and administrative reorganization, strengthening our fight against corruption, and bolstering transparency in public action, and the revision of our mining code to make it more equitable and to favor local regulations. Mr. President, to further foster national unity, which is the basis of all development, the head of state announced on December 31st, 2023, the holding of the Inter-Malian Dialogue for Peace and Reconciliation to, quote, eliminate the root causes of community and intercommunity conflict with the ultimate goal of reconciling these communities. Based on a participatory and inclusive approach, the Inter-Malian Dialogue took place in 3 stages on the communal, regional, and national levels, allowing Malians, both within the country and abroad, to engage in transparent exchanges to find Malian solutions for prevention, management, and resolution of conflicts. Unlike the agreement on peace and reconciliation that resulted from the Algiers process, which certain parties, signatories to which have actually turned toward terrorism, which has become a pretext for certain states to interfere in our internal affairs, the Inter-Malian Dialogue allowed Malians to air the dirty laundry within their families without external interference. After the demise of the Algiers Accord on January 25, 2024, today the Inter-Malian Dialogue and its recommendations, officially submitted to the head of state on May 13, 2024, remain the only reference frame for internal conflict resolution. We once again call on all Malians to join this trend toward reconciliation, a key stage toward returning to constitutional order, which would be secure and stable thanks to the holding of presidential elections. When it comes to combating insecurity, since the Malian Defense and Security Forces began launching offensive actions autonomously, they've achieved many successes with regard to combating terrorism. All regions have now been recovered from the hands of terrorist groups, especially the region of Kidal on November 14, 2023, after a memorable military operation. Today, terrorist groups have been severely weakened. The Malian Defense and Security Forces have been deployed throughout the national territory. In addition, our forces' offensives are continuing to dismantle the remaining terrorist networks. The government of Mali remains aware that a purely security-based response is limited in its effectiveness. That's why, in addition to military action, the government of Mali has a comprehensive integrated strategy with the goal of restoring the authority of the state throughout the national territory. It includes political, administrative measures, as well as measures for economic and social development, including dialogue with armed groups and the provision of basic social services to our brave population. Despite these concrete and positive results, these criminal groups continue to have a certain capacity to cause trouble through their desperate attempts to undermine our territorial integrity, and they are terrorizing our populations. And here, from this podium, I must denounce the support for these groups from foreign state sponsors. Foreign state sponsors. After years of denouncing these state sponsors that are supporting international terrorism, Ukrainian authorities flagrantly violated in an unprecedented way the UN Charter, as well as the relevant UN conventions and resolutions regarding the prevention of terrorism, when the officials of this country, having confused the international arena for a theater stage, acknowledged their participation in the cowardly terrorist attack against a patrol of the Defense and Security Forces on July 24th to 26th, 2024 in Tinzawaten in the region of Kidal. Mr. President, in light of the complex situation in the Sahel, motivated solely by their desire to take their country's fate into their own hands, Their Excellencies, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, President of Faso, Head of State of Burkina, Colonel Assimi Goïta, President of the Transition, Head of State of Mali, and Brigadier General Abdourahmane Tiani, President of the National Council for the Salvation of the Homeland, Head of State of Niger, launched the Alliance of the States of the Sahel, which is a collective defense and mutual assistance architecture to combat terrorism, by signing the Liptako-Gourma Charter on September 16, 2023. 10 months later, exactly 10 months later, on July 6, 2024, the founding fathers of the AES, the Alliance of States of the Sahel, sovereignly decided to transform this mechanism into a confederation based on 3 pillars: diplomacy, defense, and development, with the ultimate goal of bringing about a federation. Very quickly, important results were achieved in the fight against terrorism thanks to our pooling of our resources for defense, as well as joint military operations, and thanks to our tireless commitment to eradicating terrorism. That is why the member states of the Confederation of States of the Sahel, on August 19, 2024, sent a joint letter to the Security Council of the United Nations to condemn the support of the Ukrainian authorities for international terrorism, to denounce aggression against Mali, and to demand that the Security Council take appropriate measures against the Ukrainian government. Here, I would also like to recall that this letter was sent at a time when Mali was still waiting for the outcome of a previous letter sent to the Security Council from August 15, 2022, which exposed the acts of aggression committed by France against Mali, as well as France's involvement in the promotion of 3 forms of terrorism in the Sahel: armed terrorism, economic terrorism, and media terrorism. With a surface area of 2.758 million square kilometers, with 71 million inhabitants, mostly young people, with an outstanding economic potential, as well as mineral resources covering almost all of the elements of the periodic table, the Confederation of the States of the Sahel, based on the state of the heads of state, peoples, and defense and security forces, are well aware of their own dignity and their honor, and they're more motivated than ever by the blood of their own treacherously spilled. They are resolved to combat terrorism in all of its forms and to honor the memory of victims, civilians and soldiers, Sahelians and foreigners. They are determined to defend their territorial integrity and to ensure their prosperity in a peaceful manner, as laid out in the preamble of the Liptako-Gourma Charter, which refers to various international organizations, including ECOWAS, and to universal values. As for the lords of war and chaos, with the assistance of God, we will triumph again and always over your sinister and diabolical schemes. Strangely, since the creation of the AES, we've been surprised by the fierce hostility it has encountered, especially from certain officials of ECOWAS, who are acting on the orders of imperialist and neocolonial entities. The rest of history is well known. Amadou Hampâté Bâ said, I quote, "If you try too hard to get rid of a pesky frog, it will end up settling in your own pond," end quote. The Confederation of States of the Sahel is open to all investors as long as the partnership benefits the populations of the Sahel and as long as it respects the sovereignty of states. Mr. President, here I would like to commend relations of cooperation which are exemplary and productive between Mali and Russia, China, Turkey, Iran, and many other of our true allies. Mali remains open to all partners that wish to help it address its many challenges. In this regard, I reaffirm that the government of Mali remains willing to pursue and bolster its cooperation with the UN, especially through its agencies, funds, and programs with which we enjoy excellent cooperation relations. Here as well, we would like to commend and recognize the wisdom of His Excellency, the President Abdelmajid Tebboune, President of the Republic, the Democratic People's Republic of Algeria. On August 29, 2024, during a visit to the south of Algeria, you had said that Libya, Niger, and Mali were brotherly nations which you supported and would never harm. The Malian people were not surprised by these remarks, which eloquently demonstrated your Pan-Africanism, like that of your celebrated predecessors, including late President Abdel Aziz Bouteflika, affectuously nicknamed Abdelkader Mali. After his establishment in Gao and the commitment made by Malian authorities through the following actions: offering Malian territory as a rear base for the Mujahideen, thus opening up a southern front, taking part in armed battles against the French colonizers, deploying Malian combatants alongside Mujahideen on the Algerian territory to defend the freedom and dignity of Algerians, defending the Algerian cause and all diplomatic institutions until they recovered their independence. However, it is our duty to call to your noble attention the incongruous remarks made by two of your colleagues, which go against your wish to promote harmonious relations with your neighbors, including Mali. On July 31st, 2024, the Algerian Minister of Foreign Affairs declared that the Malian crisis did not need a military solution. He said this is a conflict between brothers. The solution must be political. With regard to the Algiers Accord, he stated that it was beneficial to Mali and had protected the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Mali. Deviating from this accord, therefore, would have a negative impact on all of its achievements, he said. In addition, on August 26, 2024, your permanent representative to the UN declared, I quote, "This morning I learned from media reports that a drone carried out a strike in the north of Mali, killing about 20 civilians. Those who were operating this drone can be held accountable to no one." End quote. If you look at those first remarks, you can see major interference in the internal affairs of Mali. The nature of the solution used by the Malian authorities concerns only the Malians themselves. Since the demise of the Algiers Agreement on January 25th, 2024, Malians have only one wish regarding its fate, that it rest in peace. Distinguished Minister of Foreign Affairs, the accord is dead and gone, and you will not be able. Here I would like to reiterate that no one loves Mali more than Malians. I also remind you that Mali and its people are not just spectators in the face of attacks and adversity. For every bullet fired against us, we will reciprocate. For every word employed against us, we will reciprocate. Don't say we didn't warn you. As for the Algerian PR, in addition to providing room and board, I'm sure associated with delicious dishes like shakshuka and shorba for fugitive terrorists and renegades, his role as go-between is in no way assisting the promotion of neighborly relations. In his remarks, he makes serious, baseless accusations, on one hand implying that the victims were civilians, which is defamatory and irresponsible, and on the other hand, he stated that the operators of the drones were not accountable to anyone. This helps to fuel a disinformation campaign against Mali while supporting the idea that the valiant Malian defense and security forces would be incapable of themselves operating drones. Here I would like to remind you that the rise and the improvement of the Malian armed forces is a tangible reality that has helped us to regain control of all of our national territory. As for the use of drones, the operators were indeed Malians who acted with professionalism like the rest of the defense and security forces. And they were targeting terrorists in accordance with international norms. I remind you that several years ago, those who promoted the instrumentalization of human rights were determined to tarnish the counterterrorism performance of the national Algerian army, highlighted the subversive question of who is killing whom. And today, we are very disturbed that the Algerian PR himself is the one weaponizing human rights against the Malian army. Mali calls for these two mad diplomats to stop meddling in history. Clearly, they have no idea about the history between the brotherly people of Algeria and of Mali, and the contributions of Mali to the war of liberation in Algeria. They also are ignorant of geography because they wrongly consider Mali to be a wilaya, that is, an Algerian province. Mr. President, Mali, I repeat, calls on these two wayward diplomats to cease to interfere in this history. They clearly know nothing about the history between Mali and Algeria, and they wrongly consider Mali to be a wilaya, that is, an Algerian province. I'll repeat once more, Mali calls on these two wayward diplomats to cease to interfere in a history they don't understand. They clearly are ignorant about the history between the peoples of Mali and Nigeria, the extraordinary contribution of Mali to the war liberation in Algeria, and they are also ignorant of geography because they wrongly consider Mali to be a wilaya or an Algerian province. Mr. President, with regard to the regional international situation, Mali continues to closely follow developments in Africa and the rest of the world. We are deeply concerned by the violence in the Middle East, especially occupied Palestinian territory. The Malian people reaffirm the support for the brotherly Palestinian people in their legitimate battle for self-determination. The government of Mali reaffirms its support for the two-state solution, for Israel and Palestine living side by side in peace and security within secure, internationally recognized borders. We condemn without reserve the indiscriminate use of force by the Israeli army against the Palestinians. On the humanitarian front, Mali is concerned by the situation, the dire plight of millions of refugees and IDPs throughout the world due to armed conflict, natural disasters, and climate change. Here I'm thinking in particular of my countrymen who are refugees in neighboring countries that I thank for their hospitality and generosity. I assure them that the government of Mali will spare no effort to continue to assist them and to pave the way for a dignified return of these refugees, a safe and dignified return to their homes. There are many challenges to international peace and security, and these call for a reform of the UN architecture. In the same vein, Mali continues to advocate a reform of global political, economic, and financial governance to create optimal and just conditions for the development of our countries. In light of this, Mali continues to call for a reform of international financial institutions such as the World Bank and the IMF. Similarly, we welcome alternative and credible models such as BRICS. Climate change constitutes a real threat for current and future generations. We must have the courage to leave behind dogmatism and narrow, self-serving interests with regard to this issue. The time has come to effectively implement the decisions of our summits and of our COPs. The countries that caused climate change must shoulder their full responsibility, including by supporting the efforts of countries of the South to engage in eco-friendly development. Mr. President, in closing, I would like to observe that this 79th session of the General Assembly is taking place in a context marked by massive challenges for our states and for our multilateral institutions. International peace and security have never been in such danger since the two world wars, including in danger from international terrorism and violent extremism. In this context, it is difficult to attain the SDGs by 2030 when it comes to education, healthcare, access to drinking water, energy, and justice. However, despite these obstacles, Mali remains ready to fully play its role in the implementation of its national and international commitments while continuing to hope in the future. May God bless Mali and preserve Malians from obscurantist and destructive forces throughout the world. May God bless the Confederation of States of the Sahel and protect the populations of the Sahel from obscurantist destructive forces throughout the world. May God bless Africa and protect Africans from obscurantist and destructive forces throughout the world. May God bless the world and protect all of humanity from obscurantist and destructive forces in the world. Thank you for your very kind attention.
I thank the Deputy Prime
share. Great speech, great speech, great speech, great speech.
Minister, Minister
Prime
of
Minister
State,
of Mali.
Minister of Territorial
Deputy Prime Minister of
Administration
Mali.
and Decentralization of Mali.
Okay. So, in essence, very great speech. I'd like you to listen to it again. That's the Deputy Prime Minister, the Deputy Minister of, I believe, the President, the Deputy Prime Minister of Mali, serving as the second in command to Assimi Goïta. It touches on IMF and it touches on Algeria, and their diplomats need to really stop the nonsense. Watch the video and listen to it. It's a great speech by the Deputy Prime Minister of Mali, and I think it's worth watching. We are in support of the AES, and they are neutralizing. Mali has taken over their own territory, all of it back again from the terrorists, and that's to be welcomed. Watch out for this video. What are your thoughts on it? What are your views? Let's hear your views. You're, of course, watching Citizen AY, the platform where we speak truth to power. Let us do something. I'd like you to subscribe to us. Go ahead and subscribe to Citizen AY on YouTube. Hit the notification button, give us thumbs up, and help us reach more people. I really like that speech. It's forthright. It is very, very timely. It's time that African voices are heard on our own terms, with our own narratives, not the force-fed narratives of the colonials. We are fed up with it. We support alliance of Sahel states, Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali, Assimi Goïta, General Chani, and Ibrahim Traore. We support them. What are your views? Let's hear your thoughts. You're, of course, listening to Citizen AY, the platform where we speak truth to power. Please subscribe, hit the notification button, give us thumbs up, and help us grow this platform. Thank you so much. Back later on. Thank you, and bye for now.